The 60th anniversary special might just be the last chance for Doctor Who. The last roll of the dice to rekindle a once thriving fanbase after years of neglect, poor writing and mind-numbing wokery, with just a few gems hiding amongst the rough. Ever since Peter Capaldi's second stint in season 9 of Doctor Who, the reins have been tumbling. A trend broken only by the intrigue shrouding Jodie Whittaker's first season, which saw a whopping 11 million people tune in, only for a reign to experience the sharpest drop in viewership in Doctor Who history. And who can blame them? Hell, I'm one of the fans that couldn't stand the obsession with using Earth as a centre for social justice themes, or the bloated roster assistants. And now I'm left staring at the rubble of iconic sci-fi giant, clutching my Rose Tyler body pillow, dreaming of the old days when David Tennant would whisper sweet timey-wimey melodies into my ear. But with the fan base on its knees, it's time for the BBC to pull out the big guns and take a leaf out of Lucasfilm's book by bringing back our favourite characters to emotionally abuse us, and oh boy am I fully on board with that. What better way to rekindle the fan base than bringing back the golden era of Doctor Who through David Tennant? His reign had an incredible cast, sick episode concepts, series-wide themes, and the humour landed whilst balancing an emotional edge to the stakes and character development. The pinnacle of which was the end of his reign in the 2-episode finale The End of Time, one of Russell T Davies's many classics. You have the overarching theme of the Doctor's prophesied death, he will knock 4 times, something most of us assumed was connected to the Master until the plot twist. Then you have the electric episode concepts the story revolves around, here being the Time Lord's desire to bring Gallifrey back, remove humankind and eradicate all of time itself to live on as pure consciousness. All the while the Doctor is forced to contend with the conflict between his insatiable loneliness and saving the universe. And to wrap up the finale, we're hit with the emotionally crippling scene where the Doctor finds Bernard trapped in a radiation pod, knowing only he can survive the levels of radiation to save him, but in doing so he'd be forced to regenerate. It's a deep and compelling moment captured within a usually pretty light show. A heartbreaking exchange between 2 incredibly empathetic actors, emoting their hearts off. Cribbins makes himself small, aware of his insignificance in the cosmos, believing the alien in front of him is so much more important. Whilst the Doctor, though initially raging against the cruelty of fate and his own selfishness, finds himself again and tells him,
"It's my honour."
This emotional and cosmically brilliant moment that marked the end of Tennant's reign is exactly why the showrunners want it back so badly. David Tennant's renowned reputation as Doctor Who is as surefire as his tongue game is in Goblet of Fire, so it only makes sense that Doctor Who's last attempt at mending the cracks in time, in preparation for a new season, rests upon bringing back the golden era of Doctor Who. Just for some context, David Tennant saw highs of 13.1 million views for Voyage of the Damned, the Christmas special set on the sci-fi Titanic featuring Kylie Minogue, and a whole host of murderous robot angels. His epic finale in The End of Time got over 12 million views, whilst even his lowest ever rated episode, Satan's Pit, our first introduction to the Oods and the infamous Toby line that definitely didn't keep 12-year-old me up at night, still drew in 6.1 million. Hell, 8 out of 10 of the highest rated Doctor Who episodes on IMDb featured David Tennant as a Doctor. The outliers being Peter Capaldi's Heaven Sent, which is a standalone masterpiece in its own right, and Vincent and the Doctor, centred on Vincent van Gogh with Matt Smith. This in context with our most recent sonic screwdriver holder, Jodie Whittaker, who saw 11 million optimistic fans tune in for her first episode, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, where Chibnall tried to introduce 3 main assistants alongside a brand new Doctor, whilst also battling a completely new villain and trying to set the episode up for an emotional death of a woman we've barely known for 30 minutes. Too much in too little time. The numbers for her debut season only plummeted from there, sinking to 6.7 in the finale, which was only slightly more than Tennant's worst ever episode. In the 13th season, episodes saw viewership as low as 4.7 million in The Timeless Children, which, considering you have Gallifrey, the Master, Time Lord Law that Chibnall rewrites at will, you'd expect something spectacular. This, coupled with the new low Doctor Who set with its lowest ever viewed episode falling to 3.5 million viewers, is why the show is currently at its lowest ebb ever. So with the new Doctor announced and a series on its way, it's time for Doctor Who to go big or go home with their fanbase, or what's left of it anyway. If nothing changes, then the show looks set to continue its free-fall trajectory. But if you pull at the nostalgic heartstrings of all those OG Tennant lovers, then you might just begin to mend the cracks in time and rehook all those lovers of Doctor Who once more. The 60th anniversary special is set to span over 3 episodes, where we see the return of some unrivaled greats, like the 10th Doctor, Donna Noble and the late great Wilfred Mott. Only the finest fabric, set to be woven together by Russell T Davies once again, to hopefully rekindle some classic Doctor Who magic that's dwindled over the past few years. So why was David Tennant the chosen one? Why not Eccleston, Smith or Capaldi? The simple answer may well be that it's plot based. We can see a big involvement from Donna and her memories of travelling with the Doctor. Logistically though, I still think he's the best choice. Eccleston wouldn't even bring in half the numbers and would just be underwhelming. plus he's unlikely to bring any cast members from his era back, especially given there's no glaring unanswered questions from his reign. Matt Smith is too busy fighting dragons and banging his knees, and when he's not doing that he's filming for House of Dragons, and Capaldi's reign started to decline in the first place, so he's never the answer to solving it. That leaves Tennant, who's basically the choice by default for being the last man standing. Donna Noble is a slightly more contentious choice. The only other frontrunner I can see is Rose Tyler, but there's only so many times you can bring her back before the plot beat just gets stale. Whereas when the Doctor and Donna Noble last saw each other, he was forced to wipe her memory, and according to the Time Lord, if she ever remembered him again, she would die. Not a bad way to set the stakes, and dial the tension up for their reunion, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was the angle they take. It's almost too perfectly set up to turn down. But it's not only the OG cast that are set to draw in an audience, with Neil Patrick Harris set to play the Celestial Toymaker, a character speculated to have been thrust into this universe from another, and so defies the laws of this universe. As a result, and by account of his own immortality and great power, he became so bored of pointless creations and destructions, he found a new source of amusement in playing games, where he created a universe entirely of his own vision in which he could manipulate people and turn them into his own playthings, often setting up games against humans that involve stakes of their lives on the line. This devious plotting and gamesmanship seems like the perfect setup for pulling the strings of Donna and her long lost memories of the Doctor to create a compelling storyline that I for one am completely sold on. It's not the first time we've seen this type of trickster archetype introduced to the Doctor Who universe either, the first being in the Sarah Jane adventures as a trickster itself who seeks out a vulnerable point in time that, if changed, threatens to cause ripples of chaos throughout the timeline. The trickster finds someone so desperate to make a deal, in this case Sarah Jane's childhood friend who was about to fall to her death, and makes a deal certain to cause chaos. If the Celestial Toymaker's games are anything as malicious as this, I can see him using the vulnerability of Donna's memories as the weak point in time. Her connection with the Doctor and how weak the Doctor is between his regenerations is the perfect time to cause ripples of chaos and potentially secure the Doctor as his most notable toy yet. He could bring the 10th Doctor back, as well as Donna's memories which would burn her up, and look to manipulate the Doctor into needing to sacrifice himself in order to save Donna. He'd be in the right place at the right time for Barney Stinson, the Toymaker, to manipulate the weak and confused Doctor, using the pawns of his old companion and friends. And if all that wasn't enough, the icing on the cake is Russell T Davies returning to tie all of these juicy features together into a coherent and gripping storyline. Not only was Davies responsible for the rebirth of Doctor Who in the new era, he also created some of the most terrifying monsters, like the Midnight Entity or the Jadoon, and had his hands in some of the best episodes like the Butterfly Effect in Turn Left, or Fear and the Unknown and its power in Midnight. Russell T Davies' ability to craft a quality story alongside his darker, more gritty side, with creations like Torchwood, hold a lot of promise to me that this 3-part special really could be the revival Doctor Who needs after so many years of mediocrity. And if all that wasn't enough, perhaps his experience writing 3 episodes of Chucklevision would do the trick. But the question is this just a fanboy inside of me talking? We've seen it before by the likes of Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, where they tried to member berries us, using our favourite pastime characters, their cheap attempt at clawing back some relevancy for the IP. Can they really claw back the original audience? And more importantly, can they keep that audience glued and committed to another new season? I think there's enough packed into this special to entice everyone that ever has or ever will be interested in Doctor Who to it. Speaking for myself, I just want to see David Tennant in his element, spinning timey-wimey lyrical masterclasses as he faces off against perilous villains and faces making agonising choices and genuine danger. I really do think this will be the last roll of the dice for peak Doctor Who. Either this special delivers a compelling storyline with a blend of humour, genuine emotional turmoil and thought-provoking concepts, or it falls flat and shits out a bloated cast with too many companions, hollow social justice messaging that's just poorly disguised as lecturing rather than real story, and uninvented concepts we've seen over the past few years. Not even record-breaking numbers is enough here. I think it's a given that tens of millions of people will tune in to at least the first episode, but it needs to rekindle the spark that gave Doctor Who its life all along. If it manages to capture even an ounce of that magic, then we might finally have something to invest in again as Doctor Who lovers. And if it does manage to hit a home run, then there's every chance the fanbase will stick around to see if Doctor Who really has learned from its mistakes, as Shooty Gatwa takes the role. It's not as though he's got very big shoes to fill following on from Whitaker, and if the special does flop, and Gatwa's reign only gets worse, then I'll just sit tight and wait for the spin-off series of the true hero of Doctor Who, in the adventures of Mickey Smith.